Connectivity issues.
No worries at all.
You can hear me okay?
Yeah, can hear you great.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you making time out of your schedule to schedule an interview with me. I was just giving you a brief intro. So Court Desautels joins us today as president of the Neighborhood Group of Companies. Court is a leader in the food and beverage industry, changing the way we view success in the industry. He has shifted the traditional view of a restaurant from somewhere as a place to serve food and beverages to a place that serves the community they operate in, the environment, and their employees. The Neighborhood Group of Companies is a group of 4 restaurants: Majida Cafe and Bistro, Borealis Grill and Bar, the Willie Pub, and Park Grocery, that all focus on the creation and promotion of locally crafted natural foods with a huge emphasis on sustainability at the heart of their operations. They operate as a B-certified corporation, and yet they are constantly looking for ways to improve their sustainability and minimize their impacts. They hope to set the standard for restaurants all over Canada. Recently, the Neighborhood Group, in collaboration with Repurpose, launched the first ever circular menu in 3 of their restaurants: the Willie Pub, Park Grocery, and Majida. The chefs at these restaurants created a circular menu dish reflecting their restaurant. Court Desautels and the Neighborhood Group have made history in the food and beverage industry multiple times, and this initiative definitely won't be the last. Without further ado, Mr. Court Desautels.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Awesome. So restaurants in the Neighborhood Group already operate as a B-certified corporation, yet you're constantly looking for new ways you can improve in your practices and initiatives. Where does this motivation to continuously improve your sustainability come from?
It's a tricky question because it comes from so many different areas, and it always changes. You used to always just start with looking at some great, thought leaders in the industry and seeing what they were doing and trying to mimic or put an innovative spin on that would be more, relative to how we would perform in our restaurants. And a lot of it now recently is come a lot from our team. It really does. It's really digging in deep to the needs of our team specifically, because as much as we want to read and try to understand what other people are doing, I've realized over time is that sometimes it doesn't resonate as well with our team members because we didn't actually go to them and ask what they needed.
Yeah.
And so we started doing that a lot more, trying to understand what are the needs of the people working in the industry, because hospitality industry we have a diverse group of people.
Yeah.
We have people that is just this is just a part-time job for them.
Yeah.
And we have other people, this is a full-time position. And we have other people that are, might be unsure of what they want to do next, or they never see this hospitality industry as a true career. So how do we tackle some of those challenges? How do we make it seem more career-based? And how do we give a variety of opportunities for people who only look at in this industry as just like a stepping stone to move on to something else? Or how do they advance throughout the company? And through our different environmental initiatives, and that's the melting pot of people we have working in here. We have people that are majoring in sciences, and other people in nutrition and in psychology. And so you get a lot of great perspectives from people working in an organization of how they see new and emerging trends that people are that might be a little more relatable for the employees in the company. And so that's how we've just started challenging ourselves, is really just looking internally and seeing the resources that we have available to us, which I think is something that is maybe sometimes a little uncommon.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's always a really big focus on sustainability when it comes to the community or your environmental practices, but there's not a big amount of focus on the sustainability of the people in your restaurants. So I think it's really important that you guys are really focusing on the people who work for you and their ideas and their thoughts. So I really like that. A big focus of the neighborhood group is forming connections between your restaurants and local suppliers and farmers. What would you recommend smaller operations searching for a solution to their issues concerning local supply do in order to better form these connections?
Yeah, I think it's honestly, I think the smaller you are, the easier it is to form the connections, because one, your supply requirements are smaller, and so it's easier for you to reach out to maybe a smaller supplier and build that and form that relationship. I think the key is though is that we always get stuck in the mindset of a wholesaler truck that comes to our business and drops off product, and that's a product that's available to us.
Yeah.
And so we've run into that struggle. We've reversed as we started to grow. We dealt with a lot of small suppliers, and we grew, and they couldn't meet demand. And so we started creating hybrid models, and then we started looking at, okay, our wholesalers, one, can they pick up some of these products that we deal with, because it became too hard for us to we're, as opposed to one restaurant now growing up to 5, it's difficult to manage that supply, or calling various suppliers to make sure that we've got all these different products. So, at one point we had 26 different food suppliers coming to our door, and it was chaos. It really was. It was great.
Yeah.
But it was chaotic to be able to process all the invoices, to make sure the product's coming in, and imagine the phone calls for the chefs. So working with a good wholesaler, looking at their product list and start asking them the questions of going, oh, what farm does this come from? And do I have an opportunity? Can I go visit them? And that's what I found is a really big key in developing some of these relationships was twofold. One, of us introducing the farmer, and some of them didn't want to be, go down and deal with a wholesaler at all, but some did.
Yeah.
And so there was a connection made there, and it allowed that company to, if they were looking to grow further, if they had the capabilities to grow, they were able to do so, because they got introduced to a variety of other restaurants or other food facilities. And the other part too is I've had some great connections made through the wholesaler of saying, hey, this is where we're getting our fish from, and me asking, great, can I go visit them? And then going, sure, of course, why not? And so we organize these trips, and even we take some of their food reps and our staff, and we would all go and visit these farms and tour the facilities and just kind of get a better understanding of it too. So I think people always get concerned that, oh, I've got to deal with so many different people, but there are some great companies out there that deal with a lot of great people and great farms and suppliers and producers. And so the ability to go and visit them and understand what they're doing is the basis of creating that connection. So it doesn't matter how do you get there, it's just being able to go and visit some of the producers that you have. And we would just organize field trips. I would sometimes just go on myself or with just a couple people and just start forming the relationship, making sure that we, our visions align with each other, and can we have a long-term relationship? And that's what's key. And that's kind of where we're at right now. We deal with a mix of predominantly most of our food does come through, I would say a major wholesaler, but a wholesaler called Morton Food Service, which has been phenomenal at dealing with a lot of small Ontario-based producers and suppliers, and we've just been able to slowly just build this repertoire of people that we deal with in their network, and then we've also still established our other ones. And sometimes we just deal with a one-off basis, and other times we deal with it on an ongoing basis, or at least have them full-time on our menu for a couple seasons or longer.
Okay, awesome. So what was your initial reaction to the proposal of this circular system in your restaurants? Were you aware of this system before working with Provision Coalition on this project?
I was aware of what a circular economy was, but much more on a macro scale.
Yeah.
And, a great example of that would be the recycling industry, okay, like of plastics. You manufacture plastic, product gets put into it, and then we recycle it, and then it gets turned back into plastic. Well, for the most part, that's a failed system.
Yeah.
But that is essentially, I think, our first introduction of what a circular kind of economy was, whether we knew what it was or not.
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to that. And without understanding the farming industry, and a lot of farms are based on a circular economy, but internally, because a lot of times, people are growing their inputs that go into the outputs, right? So if you're growing corn and you're feeding it to cattle, and the cattle are going out, and you're keeping the manure, you're spraying it on your field, and it's keeping it circular within your. So that model's existed for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
But to the extent where you had this type of collaboration, I had not seen that before to that extent. We've done dinners in the past where we have, we dealt with a winery, or we did deal with a winery, and they had sheep and pigs on their winery that they used for trimming leaves and digging soil. And we actually, we served some of the pigs, some of the sheep, matched with some of the wines, and that was kind of our thoughts on what a circular meal is. But it's way more than that. And Provision Coalition did a bang up job of really kind of pulling this whole thing together, and it's been quite amazing to see it come together. At first you're going, okay, yeah, sure, we'll cook the food if we can make this happen, but but we're 100% on board with it.
Yeah.
And to see if there was going to be able to actually to materialize into what it did, and it did, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing. I remember when you first introduced the idea of it to me, I've never heard of a circular system until that. And then just like the whole concept was absolutely amazing. I was shocked to hear about it. As we transition into a society with more focus on circular food systems, how do you plan on overcoming the prejudice associated with the idea of waste in your restaurants?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, right? Because it's waste is such a bad word.
Yeah.
Waste is associated with garbage, and it's stuff that we throw away, and we are, North Americans are a throwaway society. Everything has to come in a brand new shiny package. Just go to the grocery store to buy, any kind of, especially now during the pandemic, but everything's in packages. Everything's always wrapped up neat and tidy. And the idea of food waste, you start seeing in the grocery stores the ugly fruits and the ugly vegetables, the imperfect items.
Yeah.
And but you still see that's a very small segment in the grocery stores. Mm-hmm. It's a big thing that people are studying, but we're still associating it with just food that's just being thrown out. Mm-hmm. And we think when we're talking food waste that it's not good enough for consumption.
Yeah. And
so that's where we get through that repurpose or upcycling terminology of finding creative ways to utilize food waste. And it's trying to just approach it in a different manner where, I use soup as an example. Soup is a perfect example of food waste, of a utilization of food waste.
Yeah.
Soup is usually, it's you're making a chicken stock, for example, and you're using discarded vegetables, and you're kind of rummaging through. It's a great tool for chefs to look through. Okay, this is what we've got. We've got little bits of this and that, and we need to use it up. And so let's turn it into a soup.
Yeah.
And so that's, if you look at it that way, it doesn't seem so unappealing. You're like, oh yeah, totally. So it just gets to that education piece and making it a little more fun. I've posted on my social media just about, eating what it's like to eat poop for dinner. And, obviously people are going, that's disgusting. But it captures their attention, and then you kind of understand it because, we're spraying manure on our food all the time.
Yeah.
Like that's what it is. And it's better to have manure on there than most of the chemicals that we're eating.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And there's just a disconnection from where things begin and where they end. And for some reason we think they end kind of in the middle, and there's a whole lifespan that goes on beyond that. Yeah. And that's through whether it's composting or finding other creative ways to use that food. And then once we get beyond that piece, there's also an emotional connection to it too, because the big emotional piece is that people are going out without food.
Yeah.
Like there's people that are starving, even in
Yeah.
our own communities, that there's, they're maybe getting a meal a day. There's the stats are staggering of people even in Guelph that don't eat properly. There are children that are going to school with no lunches. There's programs that we're working with that are helping get kids have food on Fridays, so they have food to eat over the weekends, because the only meal programs they have. So when you start wrapping your head around that, the impact that some of our luxurious choices that we have in our society of just being able to discard food, 40% of what we have in our fridges usually get thrown out.
Yeah.
And when you start seeing that, you kind of open up your mind and going, okay, that blemish on that tomato maybe isn't such a bad thing.
Yeah.
I don't need to discard it. Like, we've just been trained to be a wasteful society, and it's not our fault. It's just the way we grew up, or a way we've been taught through the media.
Yeah.
And I think now we're seeing a switch. It's not doom and gloom. We are totally seeing a switch. Like it's more positive now than it's ever been before, and people are much more receptive to seeing the impact that our simple choices can have. And that's where waste becomes instead of a what's the lack of a better word, as a bad word, is unappealing. It becomes now more of a challenge and an opportunity.
Yeah.
For us to say, hey, there's waste here. How do we make it more efficient? How do I be more efficient now? And that's where we're seeing that mindset shift, and it's cool to see, because people are more receptive in the restaurants to understanding about the circular food menu.
Yeah.
Right. They're more receptive. People are engaging more into food waste studies, and then we're also seeing we've seen it over the past couple of years, but introduction even by big companies like Loblaws doing cricket powder, and so we're looking at other forms of protein and utilizing other means, which doesn't necessarily don't look at food waste, but it's almost in the same category.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a different way of thinking of how we're going to consume food and what nutrition looks like in the future.
Awesome. So as of right now, it's almost been a month since you have launched the circular menus. What has been the reaction you've seen and experienced from the community, from customers, and from employees regarding this circular menu?
Yeah, 100% positive.
Awesome.
It's been a good experience. Now, am I floating around? Obviously we're living in a different world right now. So generally I can walk around and talk to guests and move from table to table and socialize, and we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
So it's up to the servers to kind of interact with the guests in a very short time frame.
Yeah.
But we've had nothing but positive experiences. And I just had one of the top chefs in the country dining in here the other day. I just happened to walk out and looked in, and I said, oh, hey, it was Jason Bangeter from Langdon Hall. And I said, hey, how are you doing? He's like, I just love that you're doing this menu. That was the first thing that came out of his mouth. And that, to me, right there symbolizes that we're on the right track, and we're doing something that's, it's thought-provoking, it's innovative, and people are receptive to it. And I think that's going to be, more of the future of food, when restaurants pushing the boundaries and we look at molecular gastronomy and those kind of things. It's that whole cycle, that whole journey, the story that we can tell, how the inputs have gone into it, is very captivating. Like, it's a very captivating story. Yeah. And the staff love it, because they just, it's a cool story. Yeah. And it's just something to talk to the guests about. Yeah. It keeps them engaged, and it sees that we're pushing, it's like we're pushing the boundaries. Like, if it wasn't for Provision Coalition and Izumi and Wellington and Smoy Farms and Escarpment Labs and Grain Revolution, this wouldn't have come together. Yeah. And we're like, I'm the fortunate one that our restaurants get the final product. We didn't have to look at all the different pieces. We just sat there with our hands open. Yeah. We're receptive to this, and then having product brought to us, and we cooked it like we would any normal food. Yeah. So for us, it was super simple. If people didn't know about it, they wouldn't have sat there and gone, this food tastes funny. We've had great reviews. to the point where we've really seen good opportunities for the restaurants to continue doing this. We just have to be able to find, how do we continue doing this on a longer term scale?
Yeah.
And how do we work on the supply chain and everything else? Because once again, it gets down to dealing with a whole bunch of, other producers.
Yeah.
And making a bunch of individual calls.
Yeah.
And trying to get product into the house, which is a little trickier, especially when we're short staffed, or I wouldn't say short staffed, but we're working on a reduced capacity as we are right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've served over 300 meals.
Awesome.
From the circular menu. So that says something in itself. It's at our pub, it's one of our top selling dishes.
I went and tried it at the Willie Pub. It was amazing. It was so good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And it's a simple dish. It would be the most popular because it's a breaded trout fillet that's baked with French fries. Like, who's not going to want to eat that anyways?
Yeah, exactly.
So have that story with it just allows people to leave here. And what excites me the most is when somebody's excited about it in the restaurant, they leave here and they tell someone else about it. And and that to me is the most successful thing about the whole program.
Yeah, and that's also how we'll break down the barriers of waste, or the thoughts associated with waste, is having people go, oh, I just tried this most amazing menu, all wasteless, completely wasteless.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Awesome. I just wanted to thank you so much for doing this interview with me. I'm really excited to see how the circular menu system goes in the future, or if it will keep going in the future. But yeah, thank you.
No, my pleasure, Lily. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.